Hello, people from my lair. You're in my lair. This is my office. This is my new camera. Thank you to Substack for it. And yeah, so it's all happening. It's Friday. People were wondering, are you still going to do your Friday live stream? Of course I'm going to do my Friday live stream. Is that a joke? I love my Friday live stream. And I'm going to do more. I'm fiddling with what to do with the other live stream of the week, usually on Tuesdays, but I'm always going to be doing this. Okay, so you're here. Thank you. You can do a couple things for me. Number one, easy and most importantly, is you can subscribe to this channel, which is super easy. Like literally all you have to do is hit the subscribe button. Number two, if you like me and my content, and you want to support me, you can do a couple things. One, you can check out my Substack, chriscillizza.substack.com. Bunch of free content, some paid content. If you want to become a subscriber, awesome. It's $6 a month or $60 for the year. The other thing that you can do if you want to support me and what I'm doing is you can make a donation here through the top chat feature. If you do that, and you don't have to be clear, but if you do that as a small token of my appreciation, I will jump your question up to the top of the chat and make sure I answer it. Now, I will tell people, I always tell people, I am going to take lots and lots of questions. I'm not going to only just take questions of people who make donations, but if you want to make a donation, I would appreciate it. All right. So, 10 days until Donald Trump is president. Donald Trump today was formally convicted as a felon, making him one for the history books, the first felon to be elected president of the United States, also first former president to be a convicted felon. So that happened. No penalties for him, no jail time, no fines. So basically it's just that he's a convicted felon. All right, so let's get started. Julio J. Chris, could you explain the current dynamics of the term limits discussion? Who is pushing for it? Who is against? Chances of going through? Oh, one other thing I should mention before I mention that. Do you like the new camera angle? I kind of like it. This is a Logitech camera. It's a little worrisome because like when I do this, it's a little thinning there, but I like it overall. So, you know, we'll see. Anyway, term limits. I don't think there's a lot of movement behind it, to be totally honest. When I first started in politics, so 98, 2000, there was definitely some efforts on the term limits front, like definitely people who were pushing for it. There was real money behind it. And then some state legislatures, it's happened. Like Florida has an 8 is enough rule, which I think you can serve for 8 terms, might be 4 terms of 2 years. Anyway, there are some term limits in certain states, but it's not like a guarantee. You know what I mean? So I don't think at the federal level we're going to see term limits. I guess I'd be very surprised if we did. I think that politicians want to keep their jobs for as long as possible, and they are not super interested in creating barriers to them keeping their jobs. So I would not be optimistic that term limits are coming at any point in the near future. Dan W., can you chat about the potential TikTok ban? I see pros and cons to both, and I'm curious of how it plays out. So the Supreme Court heard the case today, and it seems from what I'm reading about it, the court was skeptical that they're probably not going to step in, reading the tea leaves. They're not going to step in and stop the ban from going into effect, which I guess leaves Trump as the only person who could do that. Though he can't do it because he won't be president yet, because it'll happen on January 19th. So I think there is probably going to be a ban unless it gets sold in the near future here. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I mean, I don't think it's great that this is owned by China. The Chinese, their ties to the Chinese government, and they have lots and lots of our information. Now, they haven't used it, as far as we know, for bad purposes yet, but so I don't think that's great. At the same time, look, it's a venue where lots and lots of people consume news, and I'm pro people consuming news. So I'm kind of divided on that a little bit. Maybe I'm like you. Dr. Banana, Chris, Do you need to set notifications for live streams? I didn't get a notification for the last live stream, and I was on YouTube at the time. I did get a notification for this one. Well, that's weird. Yeah, I don't know what the deal is with that. I'm sorry that you didn't get notified. Are other people not getting notifications when this live stream is going? If so, I need to fiddle around with the settings because I haven't really changed anything, but I guess it's possible that the notifications are screwed up in some way, shape, or form. So let me know if other people are having that problem. Maxwell Finer, would you bet John Fetterman swaps parties? I don't think so. I mean, I'm not going to say definitively because I think Fetterman is very much an iconoclast. Is not super beholden to one party or the other. So I don't know is the short answer. Could he? I mean, I guess he has a lot of pretty liberal policy positions. So, the border, he's pretty tough when it comes to immigration policy. But other than that, he's a pretty liberal guy. So I don't think he's switching parties. I just think he is resistant to the orthodoxy of the Democratic Party. And I think a lot of Democrats thought he was going to be something he isn't. I think a lot of Democrats thought he was going to be this like giant liberal hero, when I don't know that Fetterman ever really said that's what he wanted to be. So I think a lot of people put that on him as opposed to he said that was his plan. Dr. Always First says, do you think Fetterman might leave the party and go independent? Yeah, I mean, I could see that. I could see it. I always think it's harder. Look, it's harder to get elected as an independent than it is as a Republican or a Democrat. The two parties have a hold on this country in terms of voting. No matter what anybody says, it's easier to get elected as a Republican or a Democrat than as an independent. Doesn't mean it can't happen, right? Lisa Murkowski got elected as an independent in Alaska. Angus King regularly gets elected as an independent in Maine. Bernie Sanders in Vermont. But it's harder than running for one of the parties. Let's see. Hold on. I'm scrolling questions. By the way, I should have said this at the start. If you have questions about anything, just let me know. I'm happy to answer them. I always love a good few questions. Let's see. Pocket Watch says, always good to be here. Oh, Pocket, it's always good to have you. I skipped a few. Sorry. Matthew White, do you believe lawfare wasn't involved? And if so, to what extent? So I guess you're saying the Trump, the indictments and what happened with Trump legally. And by lawfare, I assume you're meaning like, was the legal system weaponized to hurt Donald Trump? First of all, not a lawyer. Important note. So I can't speak to the intricacies of it. Look, I do think Donald Trump retained lots of classified documents that he shouldn't. I don't think he behaved great on January 6th. I don't think he should have called state election officials in Georgia and said, I need you to find me some votes. I don't think he should have hid the hush money payments he made to Stormy Daniels to keep her quiet about his alleged affair with her before the 2016 election. So that's me. Now, does that mean he should have been indicted for those things? Like, they're wrong? Are they legally wrong? I think some of them are. The classified document stuff, I think, is. Do I think his position his profile led prosecutors to treat him differently for good and for bad? I do. Yeah, I do. I don't know if that's lawfare, though. John says, I guess no jokes allowed. John, there are always jokes allowed. What happened? Did somebody dismiss one of your jokes? I love good jokes. JW, is the Democratic Party once again in a position similar to 2004 with no clear leader at the forefront? Are we likely to see a new politician break out again? Yeah, JW, that's a really good comp, I think. I think one of the issues the Democratic Party has right now is they don't have anyone who can kind of fill the void. It's why Trump is sort of an oxygen gatherer, a scene eater in general. But I think it's even more clear when you have an obviously reduced Biden. I mean, whatever you think of Joe Biden, he is not, he did one interview with USA Today, and he might not do any other interviews or press conferences as he leaves office to talk about his legacy. You can bet a politician who felt totally with it and good would absolutely be doing more than that. So Biden is reduced clearly. Barack Obama does not strike me as someone who is super interested in wading back into sort of the daily political fray. Bill Clinton, same thing, and is also probably too old. And then, so there's a big gap between like former presidents or president who's about to be a former president, and then like the next tier of spokespeople. Kamala Harris I guess is in that B group or at the front of that B group. I just don't know if a lot of people want to hear from her right now. I hate to say that, but I think it's like you lost to Donald Trump. Like you need to go away for a while, maybe forever. And then you're down a level from her. You have the Pete Buttigieg and Whitmer and Newsome and Shapiro, that group. And it's like they're not like of that national level yet. Look, politics abhors a vacuum. Someone will step in. Someone's probably will step in. Newsome, I think, has been the most aggressive. Obviously, the fires, he's had to dedicate all his time to that in LA this past week. But in general, Newsome has been the most aggressive about sort of positioning himself as a foil to Donald Trump. A couple other people that I think are interesting to watch. Raphael Warnock in Georgia. We don't talk a lot about him. I think he's hugely gifted. I think he could run for president. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, again, really talented, naturally charismatic. She did not get the head of the oversight committee, but she is on energy and commerce, which does matter and is a powerful position in Congress. So, I think those are two that I would keep an eye on as a little bit of dark horses to kind of emerge as voices. We'll see. Let's see. Elaine H. Thanks, Chris. Just finished reading the mailbag. Yeah. So for people who don't know, every Friday before I do this chat, I do a mailbag post where I answer questions on my Substack from subscribers. It's super fun. You can check out a little bit of it for free today. Go over to chriscillizza.substack.com. Otherwise, you can pay $6 a month and you can read the whole thing. Please clap. Hey, love your channel. Thank you. Have you ever reached out to collab with other left YouTubers like Destiny, Secular Talk, etc.? Feel like it would help channel grow. So a couple things. One, I am definitely not a left YouTuber. I am a journalist YouTuber, a news creator YouTuber. You can call me whatever you want, but I'm definitely not a lefty, nor am I a righty. I spent 20 plus years in mainstream media. I'm sort of trained to try to look at each issue, each candidate, each position through the lens of a journalist, not through the lens of a partisan. But I would love the second part of your question. Absolutely. I don't know what those collaborations would look like. I think I need to do better because people always say like, you should go on with this person. You should go on with that person, which sounds good. But it's like, does that person want me to go on with them? Do I bring enough to the table to go on with that person? I need to find people who are like, yes, definitely come on with us. So anyway, thank you for the thought. Dan W. Dan, thank you so much for your contribution. Much appreciated. It will go to my efforts to complete my Almanac of American Politics collection. So for people who've been following closely, I'm trying. This book comes out, it's thick. It comes out every 2 years. It's basically about the congressional districts and the members of Congress and the governors and the senators. It's awesome. It's a huge resource. They've been doing this since 1972. I am in search of every edition. So 72 to 2024. In order to do that, I need a decent chunk of change. So this is the Almanac of American Politics fund that you are giving to, Dan. By the way, this microphone paid for by the microphone fund that I ran earlier on this chat. So thank you to everyone who donated, especially my friend Paul Robinson, who made a substantial donation to the microphone fund. So Dan, thank you for your donation. And let me get to your question. Here's Dan's question. How much of Biden's mental decline will come out in the future? Could be wrong, but I can see a lot coming out in the coming years. I agree. It seems to me that the best case scenario for Biden in this last year, at least, Dan, is he has good days and bad days, right? I think that's the best case scenario, and that the June 27th debate was a bad day. But I struggle to believe, based on the reporting that I've seen, based on my eyes, I struggle to believe that that was the only bad day he had this entire year as president. Every couple weeks, a story comes out. I think the Wall Street Journal did the most recent one. A story comes out that says like, oh, actually, there's more decline here than we thought there was. I have written repeatedly, and I've talked on this channel, I think, about it a couple of times, that I think Democrats need to come clean on this. Like Chuck Schumer was on Meet the Press over the weekend, last Sunday, and he was asked by Kristen Welker. He said in February, Schumer had said, this is all a Republican scheme and Republican dirty tricks to say Joe Biden is struggling mentally and physically. And she basically said, did you mislead the American public? He's like, no, not at all. Joe Biden is sharp as a tack. Like, it seems Joe Biden is not sharp as a tack. I don't have any strong opinions about Joe Biden, but he's not sharp as a tack, at least on some days. And I do think Democrats need to sort of own up to that. You're telling me that no Democratic elected official saw Biden struggling before June 27th or after June 27th? We know that's not true because we've read their reports. We've read George Clooney writing an op-ed in the New York Times saying, look, I was with Biden at a fundraiser a few weeks before June 27th, and he was totally out of it. Those are my words, not Clooney's words. So, yeah, I think more will come out. Yeah, and that's a really good question. Let's see. 4 a.m. pizza. Hey, Chris, do you and your wife have disagreements over political issues? We don't really talk about politics that much. My wife is a former reporter, so she kind of comes at it the way I do. I think she's a little bit more opinionated on some stuff than I am, but like we don't really talk that much about it. we talk a lot about where to eat, who's going to pick the kids up from the bus, and what the plans are to get the kids to sports. Tammy Cochran, yes, the new camera angle is a nice change. Okay. John, new camera angle is okay. Maybe have the camera a couple of inches lower. All right, John, get what you want. I'm lowering my monitor. Is that better? The camera is mounted on my main monitor. So my laptop is over here, and I've mostly been doing that. But this time I've got a camera mounted on my monitor. So maybe that's a little better. John, thank you. Phil Reinhardt says, did you change rooms? Nope, Phil, same room. Look, this is all the same stuff. I'm moving my monitor around. Same stuff. It's just a different angle. Paul Olson, a touch of hypocrisy. Term limits for president, no limits for Congress. Don't disagree, right? And by the way, term limits for not every governor, because Texas doesn't have gubernatorial term limits. There's a couple states that don't have term limits for governors, but most of them do, no question. Let's see. John Rudisell, do you have recs on the left and right for commentators that are more level-headed? I'm okay with partisan, just don't want 100% Trump love criticism. Medved and Van Jones come to mind. Anyone else? Well, you took two of the ones I was going to say. Yeah, Michael Medved and Van Jones I think are great. I really like Jim Garrity at the National Review. He doesn't do a lot of video stuff, but I really like his writing. He's definitely from the right, but I think he's like fair and honest and, forthright. I like my friend Steve Schmidt from the left, Trump critic. I think he is also willing to be critical of Democrats. I think he's honest, and you get a bit of a historical perspective there from him, which I really like. Let me think on that. But those are a few that jump to mind. By the way, if other people have recommendations, like we need more level-headed, right? We need more like my side isn't 100% good and the other side is not 100% bad, right? I don't mind if you're on a side, but don't be that person that says like my side is always right, because it seems unlikely. Let's see. Sorry, I'm scrolling. Well, gosh, I went too far. Okay. Pocket Watch says, I receive notifications. However, I think YouTube sometimes slips in sending, or at least it gets lost between sending and receiving. Yeah, that's a bummer. I hope people get notified, because that's really important. Human NC. Hey, Chris, many people on the left think Gaza lost Harris the election. Can you give your opinion on this? I do not think Gaza lost Harris the election. I think it was a factor. I think the biggest factor was people wanted change. They were not happy with the current situation. And she, as the sitting vice president who said she supports everything that Joe Biden has done, was not change. And yes, Donald Trump is the former president of the United States, but he was the change agent. Did Gaza and the Middle East play a little bit of a role? Sure. I think the economy played a bigger role. I think immigration played a bigger role. Those would be the things. The thing I always come back to is this one stat from the exit polling. So 32% of people said the economy was the most important issue to their vote. It was the largest chunk of people when we were talking about what issue mattered most to them of that group. So out of the 32% who said the economy was the most important issue to them in deciding their vote, Trump won by 40. So that seems pretty clear to me. Let's see. MAGA Pilled Productions. Why is no Bernie Sanders progressive running for DNC chair? I don't know. I don't know that DNC chair races honestly are not, and RNC chair races are sort of similar. They're not really ideological. Most of these people are pretty liberal. They're much more about the politics of that small committee the 430 people who will decide the DNC. So it's usually like state chairs and that sort of thing. It's not usually like this guy's a moderate and this woman's a liberal. So, I don't know. I still am I know we're getting down to it. We're like less than a month away from the vote for DNC chair. And I guess Rahm Emanuel's not going to do it. Or if he is, he's going to make a very late entrance into the race. I still think Ken Martin, the Minnesota Democratic Party chair, is the favorite. Ben Wickler from Wisconsin is probably the second favorite. And then Martin O'Malley. I think I'd put him in that order, the former governor of Maryland. Let's see. Phil Reinhart. Not true on Lisa Murkowski being an independent. She lost a primary and won a write-in, but has always been a Republican. But Phil, I thought she ran as an independent in that write-in race because Joe Miller was the Republican nominee. Or did she just run without a party affiliation? Anyway, thank you. Dr. Always First, who is an underrated, politically savvy younger Democrat? Mine to watch for is Richie Torres. I think he could become governor of New York in 26. He's talented. So Richie Torres is interesting. I do think he is going to run primary Kathy Hochul. We'll see if Hochul stays in the race. But yeah, that's a good one to flag. I think he's somebody to keep an eye on because I do think he wants to run statewide. J Scout 13. How come no one is talking as much about Trump's age coming into office as much as you and other MSM focused on Biden's age the last year and a half? Do you plan to continue to highlight Trump's age? So a couple things here. Yes, if Donald Trump serves 4 years, he will be the oldest person ever to be in office at 82. Why did I talk about Joe Biden's age? The reason I talked about Joe Biden's age, and to be clear, I'm not part of the mainstream media. I used to be, but I'm not anymore. The reason I did it was because poll after poll after poll after poll showed that the public and Democrats, even Democrats, were concerned about it. They were concerned that he's 78 years old, he looked frail, he moved slower, he talked slower, and they didn't know if he was up to the job. It was a critical hurdle that he never really was able to clear with the public. So when a majority of the public over and over again says this is really important as an issue to us, I'm going to cover it. Trump, as I said, he's old, right? He's 78. Or 79. I think it might be 79. I have written about it. I've written about his lack of transparency in his medical records, which is stunning. I mean, he really hasn't released anything about his past medical history. He's clearly overweight. We know he has a bad diet. For me, I think the public isn't that interested in it because they see him out there golfing and holding these rallies and talking for hours on end, and they think, he's fine. He looks younger than Joe Biden does. Now, we can argue about whether whether his body is going to hold up and all these sorts of things. We can argue about all that stuff. But my point is, the public thinks that is not terribly concerned about Donald Trump's age and health in a way that they were about Joe Biden. H says, Governor Wes Moore from Maryland, 2028. Yeah, I think he could run. I think Wes Moore is really interesting. Amazing resume, military vet, African-American, governor of a very Democratic state. He'll get reelected in 2026. He's one to keep an eye on too. Barry Riley, what did you think of the interaction between Obama and Trump at the Carter funeral? So for people who haven't seen this, basically Obama and Trump were seen kind of like joking around and looking pally-pally. I don't make that much of it. I mean, Trump will be nice to anyone who's nice to him. Like, no one should be surprised by that. Obama, I think Obama sees like Trump as a member of the club. Like he was elected president, got elected president again, and I think it's not in Obama's nature to kind of be confrontational and outright rude. And Trump is funny at times. So maybe he said something funny. Let's see. Michael Gates. Is ambassadorship to the Bahamas the peak of Herschel Walker's political career? Yes, 100%. He is not getting elected to do anything in this country. I don't think. Paul Olson, collaborations are good, but you were great on your own, Chris. Oh, thank you, Paul. That's so nice of you. Daniel Macy, hello from New Mexico. I love the channel. Thank you. Oh my gosh, no problem. Thank you. Sandy Mater, I like the fact that you look at everything through a journalist lens. Yeah, I mean, look, my view, Sandy, thank you for that. My view on this is like, there's so many partisans in politics on YouTube, on Substack. Do you really need another one to tell you what you think is right? Like, I don't understand why people, particularly on Substack, like, why do people pay for that? Like, if you just want to, I guess you just want to, it's confirmation bias. You just want to feel like whatever you think is the right thing and that Donald Trump is evil and that Democrats are all good. it's not the case, right? None of us are all good or all evil. Like there's some in both of us. There's some of that in all of us. So covering that, I think, is critically important. Like that to me is a space that's under covered, which is like, okay, what about people who aren't super partisan one way or the other? What about people who look at something and say, okay, I think this is good and here's why, or I think this is bad and here's why? To me, we need more of that. That's the space. I mean, it's the only space I could occupy because it's the only space that feels authentic to me. Yeah, anyway. Oh, quick thing. By the way, these are new glasses from Zenni. Do you guys like these? These are new. My old sort of clear white ones broke, so I got these. I'll show you my other pairs that I got. I got a new pair of these blue ones. Now, these are similar to the blue ones I've had before. In fact, they may be the same as the blue ones I've had before, but those blue ones were like this. So I got new ones. And then I got these, which I really like. Yeah, these are kind of like, they're like brownish red. I think it makes me look very studious. Anyway, Zenni, $40 for all three pairs. Isn't that amazing? Okay. Brian, what about a max age for any federal elected official? Yeah, I don't think that's the wrong idea, Brian. I just don't know how you're going to pass it, because you know how you would need to pass it. Members of Congress have to vote for it. And guess what they don't want to do? It's like term limits. They don't really want to be like, yeah, I definitely want to age myself out of this job that I'm doing that's super powerful and influential. So it's not a bad idea. I just don't know if it would happen. Michael Gates, if you could pick a country you could be ambassador to, which country would you choose? That's a great question. Italy? I think that would be awesome. 4am Pizza. Hey, Chris, to what extent do you think Biden's perceived decline is due to his appearance versus Trump's perceived vigor is due to his appearance? Biden doesn't particularly tend to his hair, etc. Yeah, totally. Biden looks old. He shuffles. He kind of slurs his words when he talks. He has this weird look. Remember during the debate on June 27th, he had this look the whole time? It was very weird. He looked like surprised or like befuddled. So yeah, look, pictures and moving images, TV, etc., video is how most people consume everything in life, and how you look matters. Yeah, absolutely. Mikhail Yagorinkov. Hello, Chris. Do you think Trump will leave office with a lower approval rating than at the end of his first term? Oh, that'd be tough because he was in like the low 30s because it was right after January 6th. I don't know. I will tell you right now, his polling is, I was going to say a little bit better than it was at this point in 2017 when he was about to take over. There's a majority, close to a majority, 50, 51, 52% of people who approve of how he's handled the transition and approve of the job he's doing so far. He was never over 50% in any credible polling on that measure during his entire first term. So he starts from a little bit higher place. I don't know if he ends there, but he starts there. Kathy Henson, what is the basis of the lawsuit against Ann Selzer? I always thought it helped Trump by sounding an alarm and motivating his voters to go vote. So Trump, for your unfamiliar, Ann Selzer is a pollster. She does polling for the Des Moines Register. She did a poll right before the election that had Kamala Harris up on Donald Trump by 4 points in Iowa, which wound up not being true. Trump won by 13. Trump is suing her under the theory, I guess, that Ann Selzer knew her polling was wrong, made her polling wrong and more favorable to Harris on purpose, and released it as a way to hurt Trump's chances of winning. Man, I don't see how he could possibly win that case. What worries me is that there's a legal cost to even frivolous lawsuits. You know, Ann Selzer's just a private citizen, right? Now, I read this week that an organization has come to her aid to help pay and defray some of her legal fees, but it is worrisome because Trump has lots and lots of money, and a lot of the people, like independent journalists, a pollster like Ann Selzer, don't. So even if it's a frivolous lawsuit, which I think this one is, it could still do real damage. Let's see. Jay Gellis, I miss seeing you on CNN. Thanks, Jay. I love being on TV. I still do a fair amount. I do some MSNBC. I do a lot of News Nation. I'll do CNN if they ever ask. I love being on TV. But you know what? Like, I like doing this better, to be totally honest. It's a little bit more, it's a little closer to the ground. I can really interact with people. I can do what I want, do and say what I want. Not that I was like really restricted, but I can really feel free to do and say what I want. But so, yeah, I'm going to keep doing TV whenever they ask. Let's see. Sorry, I'm just scrolling up because I've missed a bunch of things. Uh, Human NC, and thank you for the donation. Many people on the left think Harris lost over Gaza. Could you talk us through your opinion on this? I did answer this already, which I would say, was it a piece of it? Sure. Did she lose because of Gaza? No. It could have cost her real votes in Michigan, but even if she wins Michigan, she doesn't win the presidency if she loses the other 6 swing states. So, to me, it's an oversimplification. I think every interest group says the reason that candidate X won or the reason that candidate X lost was because of us, because it's an interest group and they want to make sure that they get credit or where credit is due. But I don't think that's the sole reason she lost. XPFC Wintergreen V2O. Both sides deny the mental decline of their leader. Both sides need to admit it. Yeah, I mean, look, Donald Trump, absolutely. If you go watch an interview from 15 years ago and then watch an interview with him now, he has a more limited vocabulary. He repeats himself more often. He forgets things more often. Joe Biden, to me, like, it's just even from a couple of years ago, like, there's no question that he has declined or eroded some mentally. Like, he doesn't hear things well. He doesn't have words at his command nearly as well. I mean, just go watch the first 10 minutes of the June 27th debate if you've forgotten this, because it's just so clear that he is in decline. Yeah. Let's see. Sandy Mater said Chuck Schumer needs to retire. That's not going to happen, at least not in the near term. YR, with the long list of Biden administration accomplishments, many quite impactful, why didn't the administration or Democrats spend the last 4 years touting them as having impact across all Americans? So I think part of the issue there is a lot of the things Biden did, CHIPS and Science Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, it approved a bunch of money, but that money wasn't being allocated yet. Like, it had longer term implications, but not short term implications. Biden actually, in the interview he did do with USA Today, with Susan Page at USA Today, he kind of addressed that. He said, my issue was we were doing things that I think will be beneficial to the economy in the long run, but I couldn't figure out a way to lower prices of eggs in the near term. And I think that's probably what cost him. I'm paraphrasing what he said, but basically he said that. And I actually think that's a pretty fair assessment. People didn't like that things cost more in their daily lives. Like, they just didn't. And that mattered more than a bunch of the other stuff. AB, what do you think will be the impact of the Los Angeles fires on Gavin Newsom's future? Good question. Kind of hard to know right now, to be honest, because we're in the midst of it. Usually if it does have a major impact on a politician. A natural disaster does have a major impact on a politician's future. It's usually negative because they mishandled something and it grew into a national issue. Ted Cruz going to Cancun during the electricity crisis of 2021. Now, Cruz wound up winning, but it was a re-election this past fall, but it was a big issue that he had to deal with. So I don't know the answer yet as it relates to Newsom. I know Trump is trying to kind of destroy Newsom before Newsom even gets started in 2028. But I think it's too early. I think we're too close to the picture to totally tell. Paul Olson, right? Paul notes that Minnesota does not have gubernatorial term limits either, which means, by the way, Tim Walz could run again. Ben Thompson, Chris, let's say Jon Stewart decides to run in 2028. Does he cruise to the nomination or not, and why? Either way. Now, he definitely does not cruise to. I'm assuming you mean the Democratic nomination. I don't think he cruises to that nomination, and the reason is number one, it's harder to run for president than you might think. Just because you've been on TV does not mean you'll be a good candidate. Number two, he's taken some positions that I don't think Democrats would love. He would get some attention as a celebrity candidate, but I don't think as many people know Jon Stewart as you might think. Like, who is better known in the U.S., Dwayne Johnson or Jon Stewart? It's definitely Dwayne Johnson, right? So I don't know. I know a lot of people are interested in that and intrigued by it. And, I may do a video on that at some point. And he's a very bright and interesting guy. He strikes me more as the kind of guy you want commenting on elections as opposed to the guy actually in the elections. Smart Smears. I've seen some commentators say the biggest thing Gaza might have done to the election is make a lot of Dems less motivated to go out and campaign. I think that makes sense to me. I can see that. Yeah, I can see that, particularly younger people. Whiskey Eyes. Has enough time passed where Andrew Cuomo can make a political comeback in a potential 2028 run? Well, I don't think he's running for president in 2028, but I do think he's running for mayor of New York City in 2025. And I think he might be formidable because he's someone who the left will like. And Eric Adams is not someone who the left likes. So we'll see. I don't know if Eric Adams seems to think that he can run again. I mean, I guess he can run. I just don't know if he can win. I do think Cuomo is going to run, and I think would be a major factor, if for no other reason than he's got a lot of name ID and he'll be able to raise a bunch of money. But no, I don't think he is. I don't think he's running for president in 2028. Lil Robot, I think we should certainly ask questions, and I don't particularly care if some centrists clutch pearls. I have some conspiracy theories I'd like to share with the class in the future. Okay, let's hear them. Isaac Westerling Sauer. Isaac, thank you for the donation to the Chris Cillizza Buy All the Almanacs fund. Isaac's question. Hey, Chris, why wasn't the January 6th insurrection more important to voters? Was it not highlighted well enough by the Dems? Was it overplayed? So I don't think it was an issue of that it wasn't highlighted enough. I think that people... a couple things. One, I think it was a bad moment that people wanted to forget. They were not really interested in being reminded about it in the same way that reminding people about how Donald Trump handled COVID during the teeth of the pandemic didn't really work either, because I think people wanted to move on. They didn't want to think about COVID. They didn't want to think about January 6th. So that's one. Two, I think that there is an element where it's like, okay, that happened and it was bad, but like we got on with it. Joe Biden is the president, right? Like what's the real impact? Now, obviously people died that day and then the subsequent days, but it's like, I think because democracy didn't come to an end, like Joe Biden wound up being president. Yes, Trump made a lot of complaints about it, but Joe Biden wound up being president. Like, what's the big deal? So I think it's a little bit of that. And then the third thing I would say is, yes, I think people don't like the idea of an armed insurrection of the Capitol. At the same time, I think people want to be able to put food on the table, buy Christmas presents for their kids, pay for gas to get to and from their job. And I think they felt very unsure about being able to do that in a Biden administration. So I think all those things played a factor. Scrolling. Sly Fox. It's funny when one side or the other gets mad at you for criticizing their side, but completely ignore when calls balls and strikes for the opposite side. LOL. Yeah, it is. So I wrote a piece for my Substack. If you haven't gone there, chrislizza.substack.com. So I wrote a piece for my Substack that basically earlier this week that basically said, like, look, Democrats are lying to themselves and to us about what they knew about Joe Biden's mental condition. And I went through like all the ways that it's demonstrated what we knew or what they knew. It was off of Schumer's comments on Meet the Press. And all these people in the comments, which a lot of lefties are in the comments, all these people in the comments were like, who cares? Move on. And I was like, really? Like, that's our ethics are that situational and that partisan. Like, this is a bad thing. We were not properly informed at a minimum about the president of the United States' mental and physical health. And it doesn't matter that it's a Democrat or that if it was a Republican. We should all care about that. We should all say, damn, that is bad. We need to know more. As a media, we need to ask more and harder questions, and we need to continue to probe. As a political party, we need to be more honest, even if we don't think it will help us win. Let's see. Barry Riley, I watch you because you are not partisan. And I can't believe that some watchers still don't get it. Yeah, man, I don't get it either. Pocket Watch. Yes, Pocket. My email is cillizzac@gmail.com. That's exactly right. Barry says, and you suck on the ice. Yes, I am a terrible skater. If you have not watched my Monumental Sports show, you should check it out. It's called Politics Aside with Chris Cillizza. It's hilarious. I go and talk to members of Congress and other like political people about the sports they played and loved, and then we go out and do it. So like I got goalie pads and tried to stop shots. I tried to skate. I boxed this week with a member of Congress from Ohio. I did MMA with a member of Congress from Kansas. It's pretty great. Politics Aside with Chris Cillizza. David Johnson said the clear and the brown glasses are my favorite. Okay, great. Thank you for that. Dinga House. Music. Just climbed out of a wormhole listening to Forever Autumn by Justin Hayward of the Moody Blues from 1978. Yes, 78. That was part of Jeff Wayne's concept album by and for the War of the Worlds. Okay, I'll give it a listen. Austin Kruger says, but the keys, dude, that's a good Alan Lichtman reference. Don't hear much from old Alan Lichtman these days, do you? Jim Maxfield. Hey, Chris. Great channel. Undecided on term limits. Not sure I would like everyone learning the job at once, and voters can term limit anyone they want. Yeah, I mean, so one thing that I do think a downside of term limits that a lot of people don't talk about, like in a state, in California, for example, like California has term limits. I think it's 6 years, might be 8. Point is, what winds up happening is there's no institutional knowledge that's retained. The Speaker of the California State House is always like some 28-year-old. because no one can stay for very long. So what does that mean? The institutional wisdom, the know-how is in the lobbying community, right? So lobbyists actually have more power under a term limit system than the actual politicians. So I do think anything that looks like nothing is all good or all bad in politics, and term limits is definitely one of them. RSS says nobody could have beaten Trump. There are just way too many deplorables out there, unfortunately. Well, I don't think it was just deplorables, but I don't know if anyone could have beaten Trump. I think that's a really, really good question. One that's fascinating to me is Barack Obama versus Donald Trump. What would happen there? Let's see. God Awful Productions. Hey, Chris, after this cycle, are there any states that are trending toward Democrats still? I think Arizona is probably trending broadly toward Democrats. Texas-ish, though it's slower than I think a lot of people would like to think. Where is there anywhere else obvious? Not really. I think part of the issue there is the Latino vote is critical. It's growing very, very quickly. And if you assumed, as a lot of Democrats did 10 years ago, that was going to be a unified block of voters for you, much like the black vote is, then all those states would be turning faster. But it's not, right? Trump was competitive, very competitive among Hispanic voters and pretty competitive among non-white voters overall. And so that makes that calculation a little bit harder. Kennedy Ivy, in history, what do you think Biden will be remembered for? Let's see how some of the big legislative things he passed wind up bearing fruit. So some of this, he's got a lot of spending on infrastructure, a lot of spending on, things that we won't know whether it worked in the next year, but probably next 5 to 10 years. I think a part of his legacy will always be the debate, will always be how old he was, will always be that he was forced out of the race in July of an election year and that his VP eventually lost. I think that will always be part of the legacy story. Let's see. Pete Pineda, how much long-term damage have Democrats done to our democracy with lawfare and blanket pardon for Hunter? How much do you think we'll see things like this going forward? Look, I think the lawfare thing, I talked about this in the beginning. I'm more divided on this idea that like the legal system and the Department of Justice was trying to get Donald Trump. The pardon thing to me is inexcusable. It is Joe Biden. It's an incredibly selfish move by Joe Biden. I get as a father why he did it, but you're the president of the United States and you are setting precedent when you do things like that. Now, do I think that Donald Trump wouldn't pardon one of his kids, even if Joe Biden hadn't pardoned Hunter? No, of course not. Trump will do whatever Trump wants to do. Like, he's totally transactional. He'll do whatever he thinks is good for him. But do I think Joe Biden sacrificed any moral high ground for himself and for the Democrats when he did the Hunter pardon? I do. And I think that's a gigantic blunder. Gigantic. Rich G says, thumbs up, everyone. Yes, thumbs up, everyone. We only have 63 likes. Come on, people. Let's see. Sorry, I'm reading. Jay Jordan, what do you think is the direction Canada's government will take in the next few years? Will it use antagonism from Trump to pump up support? It's going to take a turn toward more conservative. Pierre Poilievre, I think that's how you say his name, is going to take over, and he's the conservative alternative to Justin Trudeau. So that will happen in March, unless something crazy happens. I assume that will happen. So I think it will move more Trumpy. Will Trump stop saying he wants it to become the 51st state when Pierre Poilievre takes over? I don't know. Amadeo Eichberg, do you think Trump will deliver a unifying tone in his inauguration speech? What should we expect here in those remarks on January 20th? Boy, I wish I knew. So if you remember back to his first inauguration speech, that was when he talked about how dark everything was, and that the country was in really, really bad shape. I would expect there'll be some of that again. He doesn't do lightness all that well. He does darkness a lot better, rhetorically speaking. So I think there'll be a fair amount of that. I don't think it will be a kind of unifying speech. I just don't really think that he has that in him. He'll say something like, we need to come together as Americans, blah, 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 blah. But what he means by that is like, you need to come to view everything the way I view it, and that's how we're going to come together, right? Which is not exactly compromise. So I don't know. I'm interested to see it, very much so. Let's see. Eric Wood, anyone calling Chris partisan or whatever is spouting off before actually listening. Thank you, Eric. Man, I do my best to, I don't try to be nonpartisan. I just try to see things through a reporter's lens, a journalist lens, as opposed to an activist or a partisan's lens. Mark Parkinson. Mark, thank you for the donation to the Chris Cillizza Almanac of American Politics Fund. Mark says, the coalition of billionaires, libertarians, Tea Party, defense hawks, MAGA, the Trump family will collapse. What will be the precipitating event? Well, I mean, you seem pretty sure about that. I don't know that they will collapse. That coalition will collapse. Do I think that Elon Musk and Donald Trump are always going to be best buds? No, I don't. Two piranhas in a bowl. They're almost too alike for them to get along. They're both very egocentric. They're both pretty selfish. They're both people who love the limelight. So, I think it's going to be, by the way, that description also fits me. So I'm not trying to be critical, but I just think that, they're, two people who are too similar to get along for all that long. I would assume there will be a rift there. But Mark, I don't think that the sort of coalition, the Trump coalition, is going to disappear or implode. I think it will evolve, and we'll see if someone like JD Vance in the long run can take advantage of it. But I don't think it's going to disappear. Adolf Chijoke, which other Democrat apart from John Fetterman do you think will meet Trump at Mar-a-Lago? Good question. I think there's who's in. John Ossoff could do it. He's in a tough place in Georgia and will probably need Republican votes. So politically, it makes sense. Same thing with Gary Peters in Michigan. Same thing with Gene Shaheen in New Hampshire. I think it would be in all of those people's best interest to, I don't know if they need to go to Mar-a-Lago, but to say, like, look, I'm going to work with Donald Trump when it makes sense to work with him, and I'm not going to work with him when it's not good for the new people I represent. I think they would be smart to attend White House invites and that sort of thing. This whole full opposition, hashtag resistance, it just doesn't work politically if you're not in a overwhelmingly Democratic state. Whatever you personally think of Trump, there are lots and lots of people, 77 million of them, who voted for him. Lots of them live in these swing states. And I think you have to be willing. He's the president, or he's not yet, but he's going to be the president of the United States. I don't think you just can say, no, I'm not listening to anything you say. I just don't. I don't see it. Bill Reeve. Yep, totally agree with Chris on term limits. Thanks, Bill. Alicon, we need more of Chris's positivity for the upcoming orange term. I'm wondering, with many bloggers, networks talking every day how Trump and his people are the worst, we would stay sane. I mean, my view is like, I couldn't do this job if I was just down and pessimistic all the time. It would be too hard to do. Like, 'cause I'm with it all day, every day. My view is like, let's take it day by day, and let's figure out where are the places where Trump does things that are absolutely worthy of criticism and critique, and where are the places that he does things that are worth paying positive attention to. Same thing with Democrats. Who are the Democrats who are trying to make a case for the future of the party? What does that case look like? What's going on in state legislatures? What are they doing on policy? Is some of that policy bubbling up to the national level? Like, there's so many things to focus on. I think this like obsessive, like everything Trump does is bad. I don't, that's not for me. Sherry Zimmerman, your new glasses look so distinguishing and smart. Oh dear, I lost it. Hold on. You snooze, you news. Can the DNC remake their platform based on a proactive vision rather than reactions to Trump policies? I think they need to start thinking about that. I mean, look, I think it's not that much of an oversimplification to say in 2016 and 2024, the overwhelming message from the Democratic nominee to undecided voters in a general election was, well, you're not going to vote for that guy. When in fact, they were okay with voting for that guy. I think Democrats have to find ways to talk about a vision for the country that appeals to people beyond those people who live on the coast. Snake C. Hey, Chris, I think the case for Jon Stewart is that a previous chatter brought up would be he is well known in the Democratic primary, he has fought for several good causes, and he can attract a wide spectrum. I mean, we'll see. But again, the idea of Jon Stewart as a candidate versus Jon Stewart as an actual candidate, I think would be different. I've seen so many times, and it's mostly politicians, but so many times where it's like, well, this guy's going to get in the race and he's going to knock everybody's socks off. And he gets in the race and he doesn't knock everybody's socks off. So, I mean, maybe, like, I don't know, but I just, assuming that Jon Stewart can somehow just walk to the Democratic primary nomination seems crazy to me. Rob, From a tipping point perspective, I think gender identity politics cost Harris the election. Trump's trans rights ad that ran in swing states ad nauseum was literally crazy. Yeah, look, again, Kamala Harris didn't actually talk very much in this campaign about sort of wokeism and trans policy. But that video from 2019, when she was running as a much more liberal candidate for the Democratic presidential nomination, was played over and over again. I think that became indicative of sort of this broader disconnect that Democrats, Harris and others, are too focused on their progressive agenda to be focused on the things that matter to you, whether or not you agree with their progressive agenda, to focus on things that matter in your lived daily life. How much do things cost? Can I afford college for my kid? Can I afford, if I lose my job, am I going to lose my home, right? Those very basic things. So it's like, plenty of people might have agreed with Kamala Harris on trans stuff, but it was like, that shouldn't be her number 1, 2, or 3 priority. And they thought it was, even though, as I said, she didn't talk about it a ton during the campaign. So yeah, I do think that played a role. Let's see. They call me Blake. How would you contrast the questions and engagements of these live streams versus your open question days on your Substack? How much better are we? I would say this YouTube audience is less liberal than the people who ask questions on my Substack. Not exclusively. But what worries me about the comment section on my Substack, to be candid, is that the liberal voices are bullying other voices from. I hate that, and I don't want that. I want it to be an open forum. If you're on the left, great. But what I don't want is intimidation of people who disagree with you. That's how we got to where we are, where you can't even have Thanksgiving dinner with someone who voted for a presidential candidate that wasn't the presidential candidate you voted for. That's not what I'm interested in doing, right? I'm interested in the exact opposite. So I want more. You don't have to be pro-Trump. It's not that. It's just I want more people who are like, okay, like I don't totally agree with either side on everything. I don't think you should agree with either side on everything. Let's see. Sorry, I'm going through. Sudashis Dash. What changed suddenly that everyone was taking note of the U.S. president? It seems that when Biden was president, he and the U.S. positions were weak, but suddenly the U.S. presidency is very powerful with Trump as president. Well, Trump isn't president yet, so we'll see. I mean, I think Trump is much more activist, right? He's much more out there. He's much more bullying. You can say that that's a good thing or a bad thing, but he's like doing stuff. He's threatening tariffs against Mexico, Canada, and China. He's talking about taking over Greenland. He's talking about renaming the Panama Canal and the Gulf of America, right? So he's just more active. Biden is much less active and always has been. And I think Biden is, again, as I said, I think diminished at this point. Let's see. Ethan Silver, do you think the anti-incumbency trend we have seen in recent elections across the world will continue into 2026, such that Democrats should expect a blue wave, at least in the House, similar to 2018? Well, you're absolutely right about the anti-incumbent wave, right? So the governing party or the incumbent party or the ruling party in, I think, 74 global elections this year lost ground, which is stunning in America as well. The other historic piece is traditionally in the first midterm of a president's term, his party loses seats in Congress, House and Senate, but definitely the House. So if historical trends continue, I think Democrats will take over the House in 2026. And then I think everyone will be like, wait, I thought we said Democrats had a brand problem. They don't. We won't really find out how big a brand problem they have or not is until 2028, because that election will not just be about what do you think of Donald Trump. It'll be about what's the vision for the future of the party. Let's see. La Robot says, hot take, Gulf of America is the new freedom fries. Yes. YR, thank you for bringing up the Latino voter. The Republicans clearly understand the wide diversity that exists within many Latino groups and cultures. The Dems clearly don't get it. Why? Oh, I think they took Hispanic voters for granted. I think they assumed, well, these people are going to be for us because they had been for us in the past. And I think, the Hispanic or Latino vote is more nuanced than I think a lot of Democrats give it credit for. And it's a very Catholic vote, for example. And, a lot of those people are socially quite conservative. So I just think you cannot take voters for granted. When you take voters for granted, you lose. You lose them. Hold on. Let me see if I can get a few other. Joe Reardon, hey, what do you think of Deb Fisher's husband not shaking Kamala's hand? So I saw this move around online and go viral. I'm like, how disrespectful. I also saw that he was holding a cane, or people said he was holding a cane and therefore couldn't shake her hand. I don't know what to like. This is the problem. It's like, even for someone like me who pays a lot of attention to this stuff, I don't know what the facts are. Did he have a cane? Could he have moved it to the other hand? Was he purposely being disrespectful to Harris? I guess I'd like to default on the positive side of human nature and say, no, he wasn't purposely being disrespectful. But it's like, even I can't figure this out. And I spend my whole life with it. So how is the average person going to? It's like, it just gets weaponized, right? First it was, they're so disrespectful. Republicans hate Kamala Harris and they won't even shake her hand. Then the pushback was, oh, see, the Democrats ran with this story when in fact the guy has a cane and he couldn't shake her hand. It's also confusing. Mo Coffee, Wayne Gretzky for president of the United States. You got to skate where the puck is going to be, not where the puck is, Mo. I like that. Gary N., do you think Democrats can ever take an introspective view and potentially look to move toward a more central position on a range of issues? I don't know if centrist is the way to go. I think it has to be more people focused and less focused on the coasts and less focused on the coasts and people who are very, very online, and more focused on people who are less online and live in the middle of America. I don't know if that has to be a center, left, right thing, but they do have to change their focus. Let's see. Brian, first time seeing you on CNN was with your interview with Andrew Yang and playing basketball with him. That was awesome. Love to see you talk to him again, especially about the forward party building third party from the ground. I'll reach out to Andrew. He's a very interesting, bright guy. I'll reach out to him and see what I can do. Let's see. I'm just making sure I don't have anything else. I think that's about it. All right. That's all I got. Folks, thanks as always for joining me. Do this every Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern time. Try to answer as many questions as I can. You can do a couple things to support me. You can subscribe to this channel. That's the easiest thing to do. It's free. All you got to do is click the subscribe button. Couple slightly harder things. You can make a donation to me here. I'm also going to do a buy me coffee link that'll be up on my YouTube page. If you want to just donate to support what I'm doing, that's how I keep doing this. So any little bit that you can donate is appreciated. The other thing you can do is you can go to my Substack, chriscillizza.substack.com. It's just a daily political newsletter, comes to your email inbox. You can subscribe for free and you'll get a bunch of content. To get all of the content, including a free it's not free, a 15-minute Zoom call with me, you pay $6 a month or $60 for a year, become a paid subscriber, support independent journalism. The other thing you can do, and this is relatively easy, is spread the word on this channel. Tell people about it. Tell people what I'm doing. Tell people how I'm doing it, that I'm trying to approach these things as a reporter, not as a partisan or an advocate. But then I'm making videos, between 4 and 8 videos a week and a couple live streams a week, a bunch of YouTube shorts, making a ton of content. So everybody take care of yourselves. Enjoy your weekend. If you're anywhere near me, stay warm because it's freezing, and be well. Take care.